Save TF2 is happening again, and it could end badly. If Save TF2 creates enough pressure for Valve to feel they must do something, yet fixing the anti-cheat is ultimately unrealistic, it means we're getting a half-baked fix. TF2 is $20 again, and kicking out free-to-plays, stuff like that. It fixed the issue, but at the expense of the game's growth, and TF2 would actually die. Right now, VAC basically does two checks: whether you've messed with the game directly, and what's running on your computer. Valve has a secret list of blacklisted files, and if VAC finds a match, you get marked. VAC itself is functional. You'd get banned for using the public version of Lamaubox today, for example. But the blacklist isn't being kept up to date, so nothing happens. Since this is a bunch of treadmill work Valve have said they won't do, they probably aren't going to do it. So VAC isn't going to get updated, but they still have to do something. So this brings us to bad desperate measures, like the mute on free-to-plays from talking and calling medic, but at least it's easy. This might be a manual ban wave on all the bots, then making TF2 a paid game. A manual ban wave would still be a bunch of work, but theoretically, you just do it once and they won't be able to get back in because of the strict barriers to playing TF2. I hope Valve doesn't do this, but it would work, so it could happen. Though even if VAC becomes the perfect anti-cheat, there's already an evolution in bots that make it pointless. Instead of cheating, the bots are created to blend in as much as possible and call vote kicks on human players. They play low-key classes such as the engineer, then randomly call vote kicks on real players. There's quite a few posts on Reddit about this already, and this is genuinely almost impossible to fix with the usual detection methods. What would you detect to tell a bad player from a bot? You can randomize every keyboard and mouse inputs, or even record your own inputs while playing normally and play a macro back. Most MMOs suffer from this type of botting problem, and it exists in CS as well. June 2023, they changed it to require an XP rank up. Bots weren't stopped, and took DM servers hostage, kicking any humans that joined to farm XP for cases. But even if the usual methods don't work, AI would work, right? I think it can, but there's big assumptions you need to make. AI is basically a tool to fill in the blanks. If you are training an AI to recognize cats, you gather cat photos and say, somehow all of these photos are cats. AI then brute forces through tons of combinations to solve for how. What's the overarching pattern that's common between all the cat photos? The answer it finds becomes an AI model that can score how likely a given photo has a cat. So here's the problem. If you're training an AI to recognize cheats, where do you get the cat photos, the examples to feed the AI from? Sure, Valve has recordings of all matches played, but someone needs to watch games in the first place to find examples of cheaters for the AI to use. Then, to make sure the AI doesn't overdo it and accuse real players, you would also need to provide examples of players who aren't cheating. Similarly, with bots that try to blend in, it wouldn't be simple to get examples of bots and non-bots to use. ChatGPT got around this by buying data other companies have already neatly organized. But is there some company with databases of TF2 bots and legitimate players ready to sell? So it'll be hard, but just get a few guys to watch matches for a few days, and you can use that, right? That's not enough, because AI needs many examples to approach accuracy. For something that has many examples to learn from, such as riding a bike, GPT could produce an answer indistinguishable from a human. But if I ask niche topics, such as what's a speed shot, which is talked about much less than riding a bike, there's way less examples to train on, resulting in a partially hallucinated answer. It's seemingly seen enough examples to connect speed shots with rocket jumping, but not enough examples to explain it accurately. If I ask about Uber, that's common enough to be accurate. By the way, speed shots are rockets that hit as you land, that shoot you forward. But if we somehow get enough data, it'll be fine, right? AI seems capable of getting mostly right, but that's it, and you always need a human to verify their work. For example, Python is the third most used programming language. I asked GPT to write a Python Discord bot that would remove embeds from messages. It produced a bot that doesn't do anything. Removing embeds with bots have been supported since before its knowledge cutoff in October 2023. This is my guess as to why VACnet was designed as an AI that feeds into Overwatch. Its results can't be relied upon. It's always possible to hallucinate, so a human always has to check. On top of this, AI can't deal with what it hasn't been trained on. For example, it can answer multiplication up to a few digits, but past 5 digits it starts falling apart. AI doesn't develop an innate skill. It just draws from its training to guess what bits of data are meant to come after the first bit of data. This is probably why VACnet apparently hasn't progressed past detecting spin bots, since AI relies basically entirely on its training. There's also rumors from 2020 that cheat developers created a bot that would accurately and honestly complete Overwatch cases, then with an exploit to identify any anonymized players in the Overwatch case, falsely acquit any cheaters that paid them. This might be what caused the change in April, where they released Overwatch specifically for trusted partners. At the moment, not a single person online has reported getting access to it yet. And because of that, there is a rumor that Valve hired a company to do Overwatch cases instead. The rumor is also fueled by text in the Overwatch menus that asks the user to review a training document to evaluate aimbot. All these issues would apply to Valve's other AI, Trust Factor. Instead of taking gameplay and feeding that into an AI, Trust Factor is an AI fed with many external data points from cheaters' Steam accounts, such as the time of day you usually play, the age of your Steam account, how much you've spent on the game, so on. A pattern is then recognized between all cheater Steam accounts to flag them and give them a lower trust score. Fundamentally, this would still have the same problems with examples, hallucinations, verification. To summarize, AI detection can work, but you need to assume enough data can be curated to feed it. Overwatch also exists and isn't exploitable, and assume the AI is updated enough to keep up with new behavior. So what if we solved it with verification? Last time, I said that CAPTCHAs can be solved by paying humans. This is still true. The newest CAPTCHAs in use seem to be the Arcos Lab ones. With humans, they cost $1 to $3 per 1,000 CAPTCHAs, which you may think sounds good. Eventually, bot hosters would go bankrupt solving so many CAPTCHAs. But these services are being put out of business, not in a good way. In 2023, a new service called Nopcha appeared. They train AI to solve these new CAPTCHAs, and for 90,000 CAPTCHAs, it costs $1. SteamGuard is still flawed. Trading bots already make use of a desktop version of SteamGuard, and you bulk buy cheap phone numbers from a remote country to verify your bots. The same John McDonald who presented VACnet posted on Twitter back in 2018 that banning IP addresses, hardware, payment information, email, and phone numbers don't work. What seems to work are passports, but you might cut off many younger players who don't have them handy. One problem with solving it at Steam accounts being created though, is that there are a lot of Steam accounts that already exist that won't be affected. You could probably find any of the hundreds of shutdown skin selling sites, and buy their useless bots. So then how does the community deal with it? Why don't bots join community servers? Obviously, it would be irresponsible to sell out the current protections, but they're not reliable or robust at all. I'd say community servers have slid by because bot hosters didn't care, but also that most servers only ever have 2 to 4 vacant slots open at once, so it's hard for bots to join as a big group. Meanwhile, matchmaking is designed to get your party a game at any cost. But otherwise, there's always human moderators, and that will never be bypassable. Suing the bot hosters has already been addressed in the last video, and it entirely falls apart at what happens if the bots are hosted in Russia. But I want to add that there's a lot to gain from them being public. Assuming you successfully sue one guy, everyone else scatters and properly hides their code and operations. I think it's possible that we stand to lose more than we gain from this, because so much of the community's fixes and plugins come from how recklessly they leak everything. Almost every patch and fix in recent time is from being able to see what they're trying to do and getting ahead of it, or fixing the bug being abused. If the trade was one bot hoster being permanently gone, in exchange for information on their plans and code, this would be a terrible deal. To wrap up, here's my tier list of solutions. Starting from the bottom is SteamGuard and CAPTCHAs. Neither of these do anything and have robust workarounds to bypass them. Next, I'd consider maintaining VAC pointless, pretty hard and not something it seems Valve would do. Pointless because stealthy vote kick bots are already a thing. As soon as VAC becomes more capable, they would immediately pivot. Some people believe fixing aimbot would be good enough, which is fair, but I think they can make it super obnoxious if they entirely focus on vote kicking as much as possible. VACnet would fall under this as well, since the root of the problem isn't cheating. VAC is hard to work with because it's a reactive measure. Cheaters will always have the initiative and VAC will always be playing catch up. It'd be weeks of cheating broken up by a day of VAC detection on loop. You can't see into the future. You can't know what exploits cheaters will use before they use it. So cheaters are always a step ahead. And Valve won't work on this since it's treadmill work. But even outsourcing it, an anti-cheat company can't fix developers being on the back foot. The most you can do is just react faster. At some point, it also becomes impossible to keep fixing Source 1 because it's so old and designed in a different time. Next is the viable range. Valve could hire some company to manually moderate and watch casual matches. But there'd be tricky logistics with setting up casual matches to be spectatable and training employees to recognize what to look for. You'd need to also hire a silly amount of people, because even at 1 AM Eastern Time at night, the Steam API reports 4,100 players on Valve servers, which would be around 300 servers. So you need around 3 times that amount of people for the 3 major regions of Earth, and hire almost 1,000 people. More realistically, hire a company to create a anti-non-human player AI, which besides all the hard work to organize data for AI to train on, would probably be ready at earliest after a year or 2 of work. But I'm not sure Valve ever hires whole companies of outside help like this. Assuming Valve would accept manually banning all the bots once, adding a price tag back to TF2 would easily be the worst option for TF2's health, but the least work of any option. The only concern is what price is high enough to stop bots, but not most people. $5 doesn't seem to be the number though, because every bot already has text and voice chat. Another possible bad band-aid is avoids in matchmaking. I assume this is not too hard to add, since this is already a feature in Dota, and it would definitely work to avoid bots. Let TF2 players maintain their own blacklist of players to never matchmake with in casual. The only risk is that it can completely brick casual. In Dota 2, you need to pay $4 a month to access the avoid function, and you get 25 to start. One more slot from there is an ever-increasing cost, paid in Dota 2's game currency, rewarded based on playtime and completing contracts. Overwatch has 3 avoid slots, and in the future, it's expanding to 10 slots, but the matchmaker treats avoids as suggestions instead. The problem is that the matchmaking pool becomes split up with too many stipulations that it would either be very hard or take super long to form a match. You need infinite slots to avoid all the possible bots, but as soon as people start using it to avoid non-bots, the matchmaker would massively slow down or just break. It also needs TF2 access to not be freely open, since new Steam accounts would get around the blacklist. New players would have a rough time being the only people who don't have bots blacklisted and join into awful games. The most okay band-aid fix is probably passport verification for being excessively kicked, but besides not everyone having it handy, it would come down to how well the thresholds and systems are designed. Bots could call vote kicks, then leave the instant it's over, so there'd be no chance to retaliate and rejoin to do it again. I'm not sure if there's a way to design a system without abuse. Trust factor on paper makes sense. You throw every Steam account data point at the AI, and it makes spotting Steam accounts almost impossible. Collect data on every detail on your Steam usage, activity, talking to friends, looking at the Steam store, and it would be incredibly hard to get past. But this data might be tricky to curate. A human can tell if someone is a bot or not, but if you're trying to get millions of examples, you need to find a way to automate that. This could turn out to be a huge bottleneck. How do you get tons of examples of Steam accounts you can be 100% sure none of which are bots? Filtering Steam accounts by human-esque metrics would skew the AI into being biased. Sorting by amount spent would bias against poor people. Training on accounts with 20 to 30 friends would bias against players with less friends, and so on. It seems unavoidable as a really manual task. There could also be a problem with the relatively small number of TF2 bots, which doesn't seem like enough data points for AI to draw a solid pattern. Overall though, if it works well, trust factor for TF2 would be the solution. The last two are in the realistic plus acceptable outcome tier. Valve brings back quick play. It's not ideal, but at least the ball is in our court. The only downside is retreading all the problems with quick play. That star video. Ads when you load in. Servers filled with training bots. And non-stock gameplay. Which is why I think Valve went to matchmaking. The new player experience is quite poor with quick play, and there was no way to fix it because servers always have a way to lie or bypass checks. And last, just build a website to curate community servers. If matchmaking is absolutely necessary, it really wouldn't be hard to build our own and set up moderation to deal with whatever problem. In summary, I hope fixed TF2 goes well, but I'm not sure what is meant to happen even if everything goes perfectly. There simply aren't any reasonable short-term solutions, so forcing one is almost always going to turn out badly. Maybe Valve has a secret trick, but I don't know and can't imagine what it would be. On the longer term, trust factor seems good. On May 29th, there was allegedly at least 300,000 accounts banned for CS2 farming that I can partly verify with the farming bot provider claiming everyone got tagged with the worst trust factor. It remains to be seen if farmers can get around it, but the cope would be anti-bot trust factor gets matured on CS2, then brought over to TF2. It would probably take at least a year or two though, since you need to figure out how to scale the system. Trust factor is still an AI that needs its output verified. In CS2, you could probably get human moderators to check through what game mode the account has been playing and feasibly draw a conclusion. With TF2 bots, it might be possible to make noob-ng gameplay look real enough to make moderators hesitate, which would be trickier to handle. This video is an exercise in forecasting the future. I don't have any comments on people who want to protest. I agree the situation is frustrating and dumb. Valve can definitely do more. If you think protesting is right, then do it. If it's your opinion that one or a combination of smaller fixes would be enough, that's also okay. Last time I made a video about bots, I wanted to only cover topics I could completely substantiate and objectively cover, which had some downsides. So unfortunately, this time, not everything I say is super airtight, but I hope it's okay and worth it. The short answer is that TF2 is 17 years old, running a 20-year-old engine. The amount of knowledge on cheating and exploiting built up over the years is huge. Bots are built on 20 years of cumulative work. Idlers got 10 copies of TF2 running at once. Cheaters from Counter-Strike Source figured out aimbots. Then navigation since at least 2014. With another game, you would need to pioneer every part yourself. It happens to TF2 because it's too easy. It seems this was missed, so I'm going to illegally reproduce and violate Geoff Keighley's copyright. In the final hours of Half-Life Alyx, he interviewed Valve. There is a section where Valve reflects on their structure. You should read the full thing yourself, but they said in 2016, they decided that Valve needed to move away from letting everyone pick what to work on. There were too many things going on, and they were spread too thin. They collectively admit that they were wrong, and Valve was better off with everyone working on the same thing. My speculation is that they laid out what was making the most money and went top down. TF2 didn't make the cut. Since Valve started publishing a top sellers list in 2017, it's always been CS, Dota, Gap, then TF2. There is direction and organization at Valve, just away from TF2. TF2 mapper Stiffy visited Valve in February. Eric said he was painfully aware of the situation, but also stated it was a rather difficult issue, and implied that Valve as a company is stretched thin throughout all its projects.
Hi, I'm Gabe Newell, and like many of you, I have a complicated relationship with Dota.